I never get these buttons right. We're going to start the Assembly Budget Subcommittee number 5, Public Safety. Hopefully I pushed the right buttons. You think they can hear me outside of this room? Okay. So we're going to try to move, because we have quite a few items, we're going to try to move as quickly as possible and ensure that we can get all the business done, but also have some dialogue on what needs to be done. Issue on the vote-only items. Well, first let's establish a quorum.
Joan.
Oh, so I didn't have everything on.
Joan Sawyer.
Here.
Rodriguez.
Here.
Stone.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. On the vote-only items, issue number 1, judicial branch. The judicial branch is requesting additional time to expend past year appropriations by means of a new budget item. Ask for a motion to approve the proposed appropriations.
Second.
Joan Sawyer.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Stone.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. Vote only item number 2, Sex Offender Management Board Spring Finance Letter. The administration submitted a spring finance letter requesting two-year limited term positions and $311,000 from the general fund for the training requirements and workload increases imposed by Chelsea's Law, Chapter 219, Statutes of 2010, for the California Sex Offender Management Board and the state authorized risk assessment tolls for sex offenders. Need a motion to approve?
Second.
Joan Sawyer.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Stone.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Vote item issue number 3, parole, revocation, and compliance workload. The spring finance letter requests the continuation of $5.191 million from the general fund and the conversion of 36 parole agent, 1 position from limited term to permanent positions in order to manage the ongoing workload associated with patrol, revocations, and court compliance. Entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Joan Sawyer.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Stone.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay, and now vote only issue number 4, enhanced CDCR litigation BCP. The governor's budget requests $1.36 million for 5 additional full-time deputy attorney general positions in order to provide ongoing representation for CDCR in the class action cases of Coleman versus Brown, Plata versus Brown, the 3-judge panel, and other class action litigation. Reject proposal. So we do nothing. The chair.
Yeah, are we looking for a motion?
Motion to reject.
Yes.
Make a motion to reject.
Second.
Joan Sawyer.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Stone. Motion passes 3-0.
And then I have one more. Okay. And then, okay. Vote only issue number 5, Senate Bill 260 BCP. The governor budget includes $1.586 million general fund and 3.5 limited term positions to implement Chapter 312 statutes of 2013, SB 260. SB 260 requires the Board of Parole hearing to conduct a youth offender parole hearing to consider release of offenders who committed specified crimes prior to being 18 years of age and who were sentenced to state prison. Asking for approval. Chair is asking for approval of this.
So moved.
Second.
Joan Sawyer.
Aye.
Rodriguez.
Aye.
Stone. Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. We're going to go to the items to be heard, but before that, we're going to have a presentation from Michelle. I'm about to butcher your name. Could you say your last? Nguyen?
Nguyen, yep.
Nguyen.
Right.
And her research on CDCR cost drivers, the Goldman School at California State, UC Berkeley.
Okay.
Whenever you're ready to begin.
All right. Thank you so much. My name is Michelle Nguyen, and can you hear me okay? Okay. My name is Michelle Nguyen. I'm currently a second-year Master's of Public Policy student at the Goldman School of Public Policy at UC Berkeley. I was invited by the Assembly Budget Committee as a student consultant, to work on a project related to prison spending in California. And the Budget Committee is working with CDCR and Finance, and they were able to share with me a data set on detailed expenditures for each of the 34 prison institutions in California. My project focuses on prison spending in California, and despite public attention and scrutiny to the well-documented issues of high and rising costs of prison spending in California, it's been difficult to curb those costs. While most analyses of correctional spending focus on the prison system as a whole, there's less is known about how these costs vary across the 34 institutions, and how they vary for the different types of major expenditures, such as security, healthcare, etc. So the purpose of my analysis was to provide a snapshot of how prison spending varies across prisons, and to investigate potential major drivers of spending. In doing this work, I estimated per inmate costs for every prison in California, and this spending can be broken down by the different major expense categories. So I don't know if you have a handout of some figures in front of you.
Yes, we do.
Oh, great. So a couple of things first. The findings focus on 2011-12 data, and women's institutions are excluded from this for ease of comparison. So if you look at Figure 1, and I can share one of my copies as well, if that's helpful. It's okay?
No, we're fine. We'll get,
I have one extra.
no, keep yours. We have, Mr.
Well, I guess yeah. Sure, yeah. Okay, so my first finding is that the variation in per inmate spending across prisons is mostly explained by differences in spending for security and healthcare. So Figure 1 kind of sets this up. It shows per inmate spending for each institution. And each institution is ranked from lowest to highest in terms of per inmate expenditures. And you can see that for the prisons, spending ranges from $40,000 per inmate, or under $40,000 per inmate, to over $100,000 per inmate. The mean per inmate spending is $55,000, approximately $55,000, $56,000. Now, if you look at Figure 2, Figure 2 shows for each prison so Figure 2 is an extension of Figure 1, and it shows for each prison how does the spending break down for major expenditure categories. And what kind of pops out when you look at Figure 2 is that most of the variation in most of the variation in spending across institutions is driven by the security and by these healthcare costs. And when you look at the other types of major expense categories, like inmate food and activities, rehabilitation programs, facility operation records, those are relatively constant across the institutions. Another interesting part of this figure is that there seems to be a strong relationship between security and healthcare. There's a high level of covariance, which means that they tend to move together. This data doesn't show any instances where an institution has relatively high security and relatively low healthcare. It seems that if you spend a lot on security, you also spend a lot on healthcare. If you spend not as much on security, you also spend not as much on healthcare. So that's my first finding. The second finding is that expenditures per inmate seem to increase with higher security levels when you're defining security level using a weighted average of inmates per security level. So you can look at Figure 3. Well, Now, it's difficult to define an institution by a single security level because a prison can house multiple security levels, and there are special housing units like reception centers or security housing units, and et cetera. So it makes it hard to describe an institution by a single security level without losing some important information. However, I think that using average security level it says something about the average inmate at each institution. So when you plot per inmate expenditures against the security level, you see a positive relationship between the average security level of a prison and how much they spend per inmate. And when you kind of condense that, you can see that for level 4 institutions, they spend about $67,000 per inmate. For level 3, they spend about $57,000 per inmate, and for level 2, they spend about $48,000 per inmate. And there's about a $9,300 differential between the different security levels. So those are the two findings that I wanted to present, and I just wanted to briefly discuss some, follow-up questions from that. So the first finding shows that most of the variation is driven by security and healthcare costs. So I think that helps narrow the focus of the spending conversation to those two main drivers. And, future analysis can be done to kind of get at other questions, such as how much of the healthcare costs are driven by expensive medical procedures versus how much of that is driven by something like medical provider vacancy rates. Also, the relationship between security and healthcare suggests a strong link between an inmate's health status and the need for greater security, and I think that would be an interesting research area to poke into in the future. For the second finding about the spending per security level, that was mentioned to me specifically by the Budget Committee and CDCR and Finance as an area of interest because this type of estimate hadn't really existed in the past. And one area where I think this could really help inform is during the inmate classification process. This is especially pertinent when there are inmates that are right at the threshold of a level 2 and level 3, or right at the threshold between a level 3 and level 4. It provides extra information during the classification process. How much more would it cost to put this inmate in a level 3 versus a level 2? And research also shows that there's no evidence that there's a significant effect on institutional misconduct if an inmate is right at level 2 or 3. In fact, there might be a criminogenic effect for an inmate at the threshold of level 3 and level 4 if they're classified upward. So I think that this information could be useful for helping understand how much the state could save if they were to, in some cases, classify the inmates downward to the level lower. So with that, I can open up to questions if you have any.
Okay. And this was for information only, but Mr. Rodriguez, do you have any questions?
Just a question. So I guess in a sense, if you have a very sick inmate who needs a lot of health care related issues, the cost is high, obviously in a sense.
Right.
And then if we have a very, an inmate requiring the high level of security, I guess like in the SHU program or the MAX, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So those two types of inmates are the ones that cost the system the most amount of money, I guess in a sense.
Right, because security and healthcare are the biggest drivers of per inmate.
Now, with that, I know it's not really listed here, but would we already get a percentage of those inmates in those two categories, I wonder? It would make up the whole makeup of the system, I wonder.
Do you mean if...
Just like a percentage-wise, is it 20%, 10% of the total population is requiring this cost because of the health-related issues and vice versa for other inmates that are classified as high security, I guess, or risk that require the extra security for the cost as well. So, just a combination of those two probably would make up, I don't know, 40, 50% of the population of that's what I was looking at.
Yeah, I haven't looked into the specific institutions to see their makeup exactly of
It was just a
the.
question. It was just a question, that's all. Okay.
And I met earlier with the federal court receiver and just had a real good discussion about healthcare costs, the facilities that we have now, facilities that are being built. But my real question was, what could we use the Affordable Care Act to help take off some of the costs? And so this is very, very important in continuing that discussion. Right now, he has said that we may be able to tap into as much as $50 million, which is a relief from the general fund, and because we're able to shift some of those costs to the Affordable Care Act. Obviously, another reason why we need to vote for the Affordable Care Act, and I'm glad that it's passed, and we'll start to gain some benefits from it, especially as it goes to 100% of reimbursable to the state. So the information you're giving me now, I think, into the committee as a whole will be very, very, very instrumental in furthering a way that we can reduce the amount of costs that we put on to the CDCR system. But most important, if it's drug related or mental health related, maybe we can move some people out into the proper facilities where they can get the best care and to be reacclimated into society a lot quicker. And I guess the most important thing, we're not spending state general fund money. We're doing it on the federal government's dime. And so I thank you for this information, because I think it will be very, 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 very critical as we move forward with how we link all of this together. And so, Ms. Nguyen, thank you again for your testimony today.
Thanks for the opportunity.
And now, items to be heard today. The California Highway Patrol, issue number 1 is the air fleet replacement. The issue before the subcommittee is the California Highway Patrol's plan to continue with the refresh of its existing air fleet. Panelists, obviously California Highway Patrol, LAO's office, Department of Finance. We'll have a little public comment if there's any. And this should be interesting. Good morning. Good morning. Who would like to begin from CHP?
Good. Mr. Chairman, I'm Joe Farrow. I'm the Commissioner of the California Highway Patrol. Good afternoon, members. I'm here obviously in support of item 2720, which is the continued progress of our air fleet. It's a complete changeover from the existing fleet to a more modern fleet that we have going. This actual piece of budget comprises of several years of funding that are out on the table. I realize that there are some concerns raised by the LAO, and we can spend some time discussing those if you like. But before we get into that, I wanted to state for the record that I think the committee is well aware of our mission, the vast enormity of our mission, the complexity of our mission, and what we do for the state of California. It's a very, very large state. And without the use of contemporary aircraft, necessary aircraft, it makes it extremely difficult for the Highway Patrol to fulfill its mission. We've used aircraft in our department since the 1960s. We've been before the legislature many times in years past to articulate that need. We presented studies in the past that actually laid out why we used the aircraft and in what capacity. I just want to go on the record by saying we are here with the need to try to modernize our fleet and take out aging aircraft over a period of time so we can put better equipment out there, because the fleet that we have, quite honestly, is getting old. The hours are long, and some of those aircraft are starting to fail us. And it's a big officer safety issue to us, but also at the same time, when they work appropriately and we have them up, it's a tremendous cost savings, I think, to the state. It's very efficient to the state, and it provides a value service to the people of the state of California.
you. The LAO's office?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Committee. Our office has raised a few issues for legislative consideration on this proposal. And just to provide a little bit of background, last year the administration came forward and with a request for the replacement of 4 aircraft, which the legislature and the committee approved. But the legislature also required that the administration come forward this year when the administration came forward with its plan to replace the entire air fleet with a report that outlined, well, exactly what size of air fleet is needed and how do you justify the size of the air fleet. And what we're seeing is a plan for an air fleet size of 26 aircraft, and the justification that we're seeing for that plan is the CHP stated goal to perform 26,000 flight hours per year. But what we still haven't seen is information that really justifies why 26,000 flight hours is the correct number versus more flight hours, less flight hours. And as the legislature considers what number of aircraft is appropriate, some sort of metrics to understand what the legislature is really getting for this amount of money to purchase these aircraft and also operate and maintain these aircraft, and these costs are significant, we think is appropriate for legislature to have that information. A second issue is that the plan locks in the size of the air fleet at 26 aircraft, and we find that this doesn't take into account that the mission of the CHP could change moving forward in the future, as well as future new aircraft could have a longer lifespan than current aircraft. Finally, the proposal moving forward is to only use the motor vehicle account to fund the air fleet, and this is a change from prior years when the air fleet was primarily purchased with federal funds, and this raises an issue of the appropriate use of the motor vehicle account. The MVA is restricted in the state constitution as uses on operation and enforcement of laws on vehicles on public roads and highways. Certain aspects of the CHP's air fleet mission includes emergency response, perhaps in the national parks, or homeland security missions patrolling the water infrastructure. And so as the legislature thinks about moving from using a mix of MVA and federal funds to only federal funds, the legislature may wish to consider if it's appropriate to only use the MVA, or if the mission of the air fleet may have to change if that's the case. Thank you.
Department of Finance, do you have any questions?
Yeah, Mark Tolson, Department of Finance. Yeah, we would just note that we actually did an evaluation based on a number of factors, including taking into account actual flight hours and activities during the month of June 2013. That was the basis to determine kind of the base fleet ongoing of the 26 aircraft. We believe that this proposal will allow CHP to continue to have a modernized fleet and allow them to carry out their mission moving forward.
Now I have it open for public comment.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. Corey Salzillo here on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association. We're in support of the governor's budget proposal as described by the commissioner. We're thankful for the commissioner for the mutual aid that has been the case over several years. Sheriff's Department specifically and the patrol work very closely on matters of high importance, law enforcement, security, with the aircraft that are in use by the patrol, and we would urge your approval as budgeted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, my name is Rob Ross. I represent Cessna Aircraft. I think the analysis prepared by staff was excellent. I just want to recognize a nuance. It says that the unsuccessful bidder of a recent bid, Cessna, believes it should have been selected in accordance with the solicitation criteria. What we did ask for and seek and did not get was a fair and open bid and an opportunity to bid under those circumstances.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Chairman and members. Aaron Reed, representing the California Association of Highway Patrolmen. I'm a lifelong pilot. Got my pilot license in 1968. Have several thousand hours of flying. Our officers that I represent fly these aircraft, and they tell me Sometimes it's marginal as to whether they're airworthy. We've had a crash. We lost an officer in a crash of a Cessna a few years back. These planes are in need of being upgraded and replaced. They're high-time planes. The airframes take a beating, a lot of rotations by this landings and takeoffs. So we urge your approval of this budget item. In going forward, I'm sure the department will provide you whatever information, but this is sort of a baseline that I don't think anybody would quarrel with this year's request. And as we move forward, I would welcome you to come out and take a look at the aircraft. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. One more question.
Chairman, the member Jerry Haliva. I represent Airbus, the world's largest manufacturer of law enforcement rotary aircraft. But I'm not here in that capacity, Mr. Chairman and members. I'm actually here because in 1972, I was a staff person in the legislature and was privileged to be asked by then Commissioner Glenn Craig to evaluate the use of rotary aircraft in law enforcement. We've had a very successful program over all those years, and the only thing that really has gone wrong is that we haven't had an ongoing replacement schedule. The maintenance cost on equipment that's out of over hours is an extraordinary cost. What the department has come forward with and what the administration is offering is a very reasonable proposal. We'd like to support it.
Thank you. Go ahead, question?
Sir, I'd just like to go on the record. I just wanted to break this down a little bit more simple, is that the LAO brings up some good concerns, and we appreciate their interest and their energy in this issue. But I think that what's important here is that we as a department over many, many, many years have established the groundwork for what we need to do our job. The 26 aircraft that are before you today is a minimum. It's not the maximum. It's a minimum on aircraft that we believe that we should fly, and we've done in-house studies that really lay out the reason why we need that. And I think it's really interesting for people to know that there is no national study or a national protocol that tells a police agency how many aircraft they should have. There are different standards that you see out there, but there is not one that pinpoints you should have X amount versus Y amount. And we're more than enthusiastic about working with the LAO to make sure we can get on the same page, because we believe it's important that they understand what we're really trying to do. But the other issue about the continued funding, I think, is important. When you look at our agency and just about any other state agency, all of your equipment costs occur over time. There's built-in replacement systems for that. Your cars, your weapons, your uniforms, your medical supplies, there's built-in replacements for that, with the exception of the aircraft, which leaves us in where we are today. We're flying aircraft with 14 and 15,000 hours, which is way beyond any industry standard for safety. And we have to address that, and it's secured funding for the future helps us do that. The other issue about the MVA versus that, we are the California Highway Patrol. We draw principally from the motor vehicle count. These aircraft were designed to help us do our mission. There is, in the analysis, we'll see there's crossover sometimes where, while up in a mission, something happens and we're supporting our local entities, the sheriffs and the police departments. And we do that because there isn't a law enforcement agency in the nation that has an abundance of personnel. We have to assist each other. And it happens 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, where they're helping us and we're helping them. And there's just that crossover that happens. And it doesn't mean if it's just the aircraft. It happens in the patrol cars, and it happens in other duties that we do. So that exchange is always going to occur regardless of what the committee does here today. There simply aren't enough officers to be able to police the state and protect our citizens. So I would ask the committee to understand that the issues raised deserve debate. But from our perspective and where we are, and also from the Department of General Services, who's the control agency of overall our purchases, they had no issue with our fleet protocol with the 26 aircraft. They did not want to add, and they did not want to delete from that. And so I think some of the issues that the LAO has presented, I think we've been able to respond to those, and we sit in a position, if you look at its basic foundation, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, statewide, the aircraft are used to supplement that mission, and without them, you'll put us in a very awkward position where I'm not sure we could provide that service.
Okay, thank you. I do have a question. It was just brought up in public comment regarding the Cessna bid. I just want to see if somebody can answer that question regarding the issue that was.
I have my chief from our procurement unit. He's in the audience. I could call him up here to do that.
Morning, sir. Eric Knudsen, Chief Administrative Services Division. I would like to defer from any comment because it's totally inappropriate to do so. The issues that he did bring up, however, I can assure you that we've worked very closely with Department of General Services, one, to put together a specification that would both meet our mission and make for a competitive bid environment, and we met those two goals. As the comment stated, it is currently under protest. We don't feel it's appropriate to comment on that right now. Let the process show itself. However, we are very confident that at the end of this process, it will show that with the assistance of the DGS engineering that we did it appropriately. We did it. We're going to be receiving an aircraft that does meet our mission, and most importantly, was competitive for the taxpayers of California.
Okay, thank you. Also had another question. Last year's part funding, what was funded out of? Did we get some aircraft out of last year's allocation of funds?
Sir, Eric Knudsen, Chief Administrative Services, and that is currently what is being out for contract. Okay. The notice to award was given. It is under protest for the fixed wing. The rotor wing bids are due back here probably the middle of the month, so we should have some resolve to that contract hopefully by the end of May.
So just on the record, how many fixed wing and the rotorcraft we're looking at getting from last year's?
Currently approved were 3 rotor wing helicopters and 1 fixed wing.
Okay. Okay, and then just another question I had regarding the maintenance. So after X amount of flying time, they have to do maintenance on them. Is that after every 50 hours? I don't know how that works.
I'll let the commander of our air operation program handle that question.
Sir, Mike Sedam, commander of the Office of Air Operations. Preventive maintenance on aircraft is scheduled. There are both flight time limitations and also calendar date limitations. So the aircraft undergo continuous maintenance. However, there's both scheduled and unscheduled maintenance. And what we've seen in our current fleet is an increase in unscheduled maintenance, resulting in an increase in direct operating costs, which means per hour we are paying more to fly the aircraft because they are aging.
Okay. And then with that, does it vary from the fixed wing versus the rotorcraft, or is it basically the same?
It does differ, sir. Fixed wing, they don't have as many life-limited parts as the helicopters do. They both undergo intensive maintenance on a regular basis, but a lot more of the parts of a helicopter are time and life limited, and so those are all scheduled maintenance items. But like I said, we still have to deal with unscheduled maintenance items that we try to account for in our budget every year.
Okay, thank you. Well, I mean, I can also agree with the presentation talking about the need for the aircraft. I've, being with my background working in EMS for several years, and sometimes we worked hand in hand with the CHP, and I appreciate all the work you do out there throughout the state. The men and women who fly those aircraft and man them and maintain them in the Department of Hawaii. You're right, you do work not only throughout the state as your own jurisdiction, CHP, but also with the other agencies. And I've experienced it and seen it firsthand how you guys operate. And I want to thank you all for having that partnership and that dedication to work together and doing what you do. Unfortunately, right now, since I'm the only one, I'm going to have to hold this item open until we get some other members back. So with that, I guess we'll just leave it open until we get some other members back and move on to the next one. Thank you.